Next video, we're going to work on writing equations. So that means it's going to give us words, right? We got to take all these words in a word problem and put them together to write an equation that's going to help us figure out something to do with that word problem. So for example, our first one, we have Nicole, who charges a flat rate of $3 plus $5 per hour to babysit. Right? We want to write an equation for the cost C after 8 hours of babysitting, and then we want to know how much money she'll make if she babysits for 5 hours. Okay, so there's a couple things you need to look for when you want to write these problems to make it a little easier for you. Okay, really, you want to look for that per, right? Or if it is, they might not use per, but you want to look for what's changing. Okay, so what I mean by that is I have two values here. I've got this 3 and we've got a 5. So those are the numbers that are going to have to go in our equation, right? But the 3, that flat fee of $3, that's what everybody's going to get charged no matter what, whether she's there for 20 minutes or she's there for 10 hours, right? No matter what, you're going to get charged for $3. Okay, then the $5 is all based on how many hours she works. So whenever you see that per, all right, if that's in there, you know that's going to be the part that changes. Okay, per is what you're going to have to multiply, right? So anytime you see per, you can take the number times whatever unit. So in this case, we've got hours, right? So I'm going to say $5 times the hours, okay? And then that flat rate, we'll talk about in a second when we start writing our equations. Okay, so we got variables here. So I want to find an equation for the cost C. So I'm going to say C equals, okay, and then we've got H hours. So that means that this hour here is H, right? And remember I said per is multiply, and then I got my $5. So I'm going to somewhere have 5 times H. Okay, that's going to be my 5 per hour because it's going to change based on how many hours she works, right? So in my equation, I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. I got a 5H, right? Because it's $5 per hour that she works. Okay, but that's not all she makes, right? If she works for 2 hours, she doesn't just make $10. Okay, that's a per hour rate, but then we got this flat rate in there. But that flat rate doesn't matter how many hours she works. So that means no matter what, she's going to have that plus 3 on there. Okay, anytime you have a number that doesn't change, that's what you either add or subtract based on if it's a positive or a negative number. Okay, anytime you have that per, or the number that changes based on how long something is or how many you have, that's going to be the multiplying. That's what's going to go with your variable every time we do these linear word problems. Okay, so here's my equation. The cost is 5 times the number of hours plus 3. So here I want to figure out how much money she makes when she works for 5 hours. So that's H equals 5. So I'm going to plug 5 in for H. So that means I've got C equals 5 times 5 plus 3. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25. And then 25 plus 3 says that she's going to make $28 for babysitting for 5 hours. That's a cheap babysitter, right? You can make way more than that, all right? Nicole needs to get it together. All right, and then for number 2, we got suppose that the water level of a river is 34 feet and that it is receding at a rate of 0.5 feet per day. We want to write an equation for the water level L after D days and use it to find how many days it takes to get the water level to reach 26 feet. So I'm going to have an equation that says L equals, and I've got to look for that constant, the one that's not changing, and then the one that is. All right, so right at the beginning, I've got the water is at a level of 34 feet. Okay, so that 34 feet is where we're starting at. That's the one that's not changing, right? So that means at some point in my equation, I'm going to be adding that 34. Okay, and then it's receding. So receding means going down. Okay, so that means it's decreasing. Okay, so if it's going down, that means I'm going to have to be subtracting it or using a negative number. So keep that in mind. If it was increasing, I would still be adding. It's positive. It's going up. But because it's receding, that means that I'm getting smaller and smaller. So I need to make sure that I have a negative in there, right? And then my other number is this 0.5 feet per day. There's that per in there. right? So that means that it's 0.5, right? Well, let's see, we'll come down. I got my 0.5, my per is multiplication, and then the day, right, which we know we're calling D because it's after D days. Okay, and then because it's receding, draw an arrow down there, that's going to end up being a negative 0.5 because it goes down 0.5 feet per day, right? So I'm going to bring that over, and I'm going to have my negative 0.5 times D plus the 34. All right, so there's my equation, negative 0.5D plus 34, and now I've got to answer the question, right? It wants to figure out how many days, okay, so I'm looking for D, right, and it's when the water reaches 26 feet. So if the water's at 26 feet, that's my level, right? So that means that L equals 26 feet. So this one's a little bit different than the one we just did. Now I'm going to plug in 26 feet for the water level, okay, which means I'm going to have 26 equals negative 0.5D plus 34. And this time, instead of just plugging in and simplifying, I actually have to solve for D like we did in the last video, right? So I want to get D by itself, which means I have to start with the adding and subtracting farthest away. So I have to start by moving my 34. So I'm going to start by subtracting 34 from both sides, right? So then I end up with, let's see, 26 minus 34 is a negative 8 equals negative 0.5 times D. And then to get rid of that negative 0.5, oh, I might run out of room. Right, we've got to divide, by negative 0.5. Okay, so then the negatives are going to cancel, right? And then 8 divided by 0.5, right, is 8 divided by half, and that's actually 16. So that means after 16 days, the water level is going to drop from 34 to 26 feet. Okay, so it's going to drop 8 feet in 16 days.